Welcome to the Fuakata podcast, talking about life, art, and invulnerability, from comics to politics to philosophy. Just because a guy makes comics doesn't mean he can't kick some ass. Nothing is off limits. Here is your host, Juan Navarro.
What a fucking week. How's it going? How's everybody? Welcome to the Monday Motivation Podcast on, what is it, the 18th? Yeah, the 18th of May. I've had, I guess it's like, I feel like a hell of a week, and then the weekend was long too. There's a couple of things that happened, and it wasn't easy, to say the least. As some of you might have heard, and some of you know, and I just want to address it now real quick. My good friend and partner, John Ulloa, passed away last Thursday. And it hit us. They say it hit us like a bolt of lightning. It is an understatement. It's just one of those things. When you see somebody be so animated and so on it, it's really hard to go and say, let that person could go away. They could die. You're like, no. Like, they can't, because they're just too much. You know, like, John was one of these people that I just felt like he was immortal in a certain way. And we knew a lot of stuff, and he was sick. He had a lot of health issues with himself, you know. But you would never see it. You would never know it from looking at him. He was always doing something, trying something, jumping over things, working on this, working on that, and it's just whatever. If you think I was busy, you know, he used to joke around, you know, like, oh, I'm the hardest working man in comics. But, man, if you want to see somebody that's working, it was John. And he supported his family, his kids, everything with that energy. And John always had something going on. John would come and, you know, he would call me up and he'd be like, I want to do an IPO, or, you know, or some crazy idea with Creature. And I would just sit there going, what? And we'd discuss it, and then I had to convince him why it's a bad idea. And we'd go from there. Sorry, my throat is dry. Yeah, it's very bittersweet, because I got to talk to a lot of people I haven't talked to in a while. I got to relive a lot of great memories of John on the road, and all the cons that we did, all the comics that we did, everything. The comic shop, all that stuff. So it was, to me, it was just one of those great things that, again, John produces, I think. That's the funny part. And John wasn't easy, man. John, man, oh man. There were times that, well, look at it this way, as I was explaining it to someone. John's the kind of thing that person that you would tell a story of something that happened, and it's not good, and it was horrible, and John was being an asshole, but I'm telling it with a stupid grin on my mouth and laughing at the end. That's how difficult John was sometimes. John was also just good-hearted. People are now just pouring in with the stories of him helping them out. He's the type of person that he'd be at one side of the con and just walk all the way over to help somebody with a table, or help somebody like load their stuff and make jokes and everything else. That's the kind of guy he was. He was just always on it. I mean, even in a bigger situation, we had friends that are political and everything else, and he worked on their campaigns, he worked on everything. Even if he didn't agree with your politics sometimes, he would be there to support. He actually gave a fuck about Hialeah. He served in the city of Hialeah on the planning board for some time. And he was always, we had the comic shop across the street from the city of Hialeah, from City Hall. And he'd walk over and talk to the mayor and talk to this guy. He was always doing something. Like I said, he was a force. It's funny because you don't take into account everything until, like, something like this happens. And that's unfucking fortunate. That's the problem. It didn't make it easy. There were times that, a lot of times, me and him didn't agree on certain things and certain ideas and everything else. Sometimes it wasn't the idea itself, it was just the approach, or just, hey, let's wait for a second, or hey, he did not give a shit. He was like, we're doing this, we're doing it now, and I'll do it myself. And then I would get mad, and I'd be like, dude, what the fuck? And then, like, all right. Then, like, it's me and him at the shop at midnight, banging fucking, nails into the wall or building something, because it's like, oh, un peño, and un pingue to do it, and I would just, like, kind of just leave him doing it, And he was just like that. I remember one time, and one of the bigger fights I ever had with him was because of, like, politics or some shit. And he was just going off on a fucking rant and blah, blah, blah. And I understood where he came from a lot of times. I understood. But I was just like, and he was like, no, because people need to fucking help themselves and they need to be their own man and blah, blah, blah. And I remember I got mad because I turned around and I go, you're so full of shit. Because John was the first one to go help people. First one to give somebody a meal, to treat them to something, to give them words, to give them time. He was the first one to help them. He was a huge helper. When I always remember, like, Mr. Rogers used to say, like, when you see how the horrible things happen or something bad, try to look past the tragedy and look at the ones that are helping. Look at the helpers. And John was a helper. He knew about if a little restaurant opened up, since he worked in the food service industry, and he would make sure, like, everybody knew and bring people over to eat their food, help somebody out, their business, spread the word, anything and everything. Like, John had a plan all the time. Like, you had to hold your breath. Like, if he called you, and sometimes you would get that phone call in the middle of the day, and you're like, oh no, it's John. What does he want now? And he'll be like, hey man, I talked to a guy, but you want to set up a table this weekend? All right, let's go. And next thing you know, we'd bake our asses in the sun selling comics somewhere, And that's how it was. So, for me personally, the big thing was, when I first met John, I want to say it was like 07, 08. When I first met him, it was funny. I knew about John beforehand because he used to run High Impact Comics back in the 90s. And I remember High Impact Comics. That was back in, like, the variant cover days, that first, like, crazy swell in comics. This was when Image was hitting the streets and everything was happening. And High Impact, I thought, oh man, they're from Miami. Like, you could find them in the phone book. It would say High Impact Comics. And I was like, oh shit, man, like, that was, like, my thing. Like, wow, the one day work for, there's a Miami comic book company, maybe I can work for him. John was heading that. And so when I met him and he told me, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I remember. I mean, it was like titty books and stuff, but I remember, what was it? Rick Leons was working on that Symbols of Liberty or something, I think it was a book. And there was a High Impact Comics, Double Impact was one of the books. So when I met him, I was like, oh, fucking cool. And he saw, I think at that time I was working on Zombie Years. I had finished Vigil at Graphic Smash. And then I was working on Zombie Years. I think I was, at that time, I don't think it was even a webcomic yet. I think I originally, Zombie Years, I did 8 pages for an anthology. And then it fell through. The anthology never happened. So I was kind of stuck with these 8 pages. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I was just like, all right, I'm going to do it like this, like that. And he saw me. He's like, dude, why don't you, work on the comic? And I had planned on working on it, but I wasn't sure. And no, I had already done the comic. I was almost an issue in. And he said, what if we publish it? And I go, what? And He was like, yeah, send the files, blah, blah, blah. And in that time, we formed Creature Entertainment. And that was when a lot of things changed for us after that. Because now we were this group and everything else. I met Jose Variz through there, and Patrick Riley, and Julio Alvarez, and Anthony Dones. And later on, Rick Corvin. Who else? And then Jeff DeCal. Like, everybody came together under that banner. And I remember, I think, one of the first comic shows that we did, I want to say it was like Wizard World or something like that. And it was funny. I remember, like, we met some celebrities. It was a Wizard World Miami or something. It was in the Mac Center. And I think it was one of our first cons that we did. And we went and set up our books and everything, and we actually did pretty good. And, man, so long ago. So long ago. And it was a huge thing, man. And it was just amazing. That was John. That was just John. Let's go. But, and then we're out the door. We would load things up. We put things together. We would just go after things. And that's John's way of doing it. And I think we need more Johns like that. We need more John Ayuas in the world. We need people with balls and big heart. That's John Ayua. Like I said, me and him didn't always see eye to eye. And sometimes petty, dumb stuff like politics or something like that. But I think what bound us as friends together is that we both loved comics, making comics, being around comics. I mean, there were a bunch of times, showing up at a con at 8 in the morning after a night of drinking and talking shit, and we're sitting there and we're putting our booth together, and we just sit there and we just kind of like soak it in. And I remember we always loved those 10 minutes before the doors open kind of thing. It was always good. And one of the memories I had that I will cherish. The comic shop had its ups and downs. There were times that were great and times that were bad, whatever. But we had one good night, and a lot of people came through. And one kid was just like, man, this is my favorite place in the world. I love your shop, blah, blah, blah. And he left. And it was late. It was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And we were closing up, and we were just sitting there. And I think we were, like, counting the money and trying to plan the next moves for everything. But we sat there, and we were just looking around. And we were like, and I remember John said, we did a good thing here. We did something good. Because we saw the friendships that were made, the people that flourished, everybody that came out of the shop because of him, because of the shop. And I say more him than me, because I can only say I played at my Sancho Panza to his Don Quixote. There's times that I was just like, yeah, sure, why not, fuck it, and I went with it, because I knew it was better to just say fuck it, because he was going to do it anyway. He was going to do it anyway, so might as well follow along. And it was hard. It wasn't easy to be his friend. It wasn't always the best thing, but you always end up laughing. Even if something happened and it was bad, he would come up to you and be like, "I love you, man. I'm sorry, dude. It's just stupid shit. This is fucking dumb. Come on, man. Let's go have a fucking drink. Let's go have a fucking dinner." And it was so hard to stay up mad at John, because you could have a total fuck you moment with him. And then next he's making you laugh, and you're like, fuck, all right, whatever, cool. And so for a lot of us, it was just, again, man, when you're dealing with somebody like that, to say that they stopped, and you're like, no, dude. And I think, from what I'm seeing and everybody that's coming together, John's going to live on. Because we're all going to adopt that tactic. I think we're all going to keep a little John Ayua in us, one way or another. And I think that's the best way to remember him. I guess next time if you do something crazy with a lot of love, just scream John Ayua. Just like when people jump out of planes, they scream Geronimo. Scream John Ayua before you do it. As long as it's crazy and full of love. And you're going to remember a really good guy for it. What a fucker. I will say that it does look up. It looks like a lot of things might be happening. I'm not going to say what yet. Because of this, a lot of us have gotten together and we all want to talk about different things and everything. I may have a trip to Miami and sometime soon and all that shit. I don't know. I'm gonna see about that. And yeah, let's see where we go from there. It's gonna be a hell of a thing to see how that goes. So yeah, I'll announce that later on. But if there is any motivation for you guys out there, is, man, be crazy, be full of love, be full of energy. Take the chance, go after it, do the thing. Don't let shit slip past your fucking fingers, man. Life is gonna go, and it's gonna go on. That's just the plain and simple of it. With you here or not here. Fucking, so take it in, man. Take the chance. If you're afraid of something, if you're like... John had a saying sometimes. It's like, you know, when I would be the chicken shit of the... You know, I was always Chicken Little. I was always the voice of reason. And it's like, well, actually, guys... I don't know. Everybody would quote me on that. He'd tell me, hey, cómprate un perrito. Buy yourself a little dog. Get a little dog to bark for you or something. Because, you know, when you see the little dog bark, you're going to get brave yourself. The little dog can bark, you can bark too. And that's what I tell you, man. Cómprate un perrito. And go at it, man. Go at it with a lot of love. Do all the things. John burned the candle on both ends, and if there was a third, he would have burned that too. So keep that in mind going forward, man. Just live it as much as you can. And even if it's, you know, if you finally have a lazy day where you're scratching your balls just looking at the fucking wall, earn it. Say, I earned this because I did all this. Don't give yourself that until you've done everything. It just sucks. It just really does. To John. I can only imagine he's bugging Stanley and Jack Kirby right now. Alright. Remember, guys. Be good.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode and want more inspiration, insights, and updates, head over to fuacata.com. It's your one-stop hub for my art, comics, and everything creative. Let's keep building those big dreams, one small step at a time. You can also support the podcast on Patreon and/or Substack. See you there.